Okay, so today I wanted to flip through my reading journal. I have been working on this is my third year doing this reading journal. So it's gonna have like 3 or 4 years worth of book stuff in it. I have another one that I started 3 years ago, like before I started this one, that's not as good, and I don't like it as much, which is why we restarted. So we're gonna do a little flip through. I might do the whole thing. I might just do 2025. We'll see. We'll find out together. So this is the front of my book journal, right? I clearly have a bunch of stickers on it. So we have this "Books Are Always Better" sticker that I think I just got in actually, this definitely came in a Percy Jackson set of book related stickers, which doesn't really make sense. But yeah. And then I have my "Impossible is My Specialty" sticker from Heartless by Marissa Meyer. I read that before I started this book journal, so it's not in here at all. But I really liked that book, and it was one of the first few books that I started reading, and I was getting back into reading. I think I got that from Redbubble. And then I have my "Hello, Feyre Darling" sticker. I love this sticker so much. I got it in an ACOTAR sticker collection at Barnes & Noble. Then I have Beast Boy and Raven from the Teen Titans comics by Cami Garcia and Gabriel Piccolo. I love those comics. I love the art style, and I love Beast Boy and Raven because of that. This is just, I think it's just a random cat I saw reading a book, so I bought it from Redbubble. And then we have my "No Mourners, No Funerals" with Kaz's Cane from Six of Crows. And then I'd rather be reading Percy Jackson. All right, yeah, so that's all my stickers. Let's get into the book. Okay, so again, I started this in 2024. I have my 2024 reading goals. I failed that miserably, and then failed that miserably too. And so my goals in 2024 were: buy less books, get physical TBR under 100, read 50 books, don't buy the whole series without reading the first book, and then read more. Okay, and then we're going to ignore that. The 2024 goes through. We have my 24 books to read in 2024. I only read 12 of them, which is not great. Since making this list in 2024, I've read 4 more of these books, so not great, but progress. We have many books. I have so many books that I need to get through, so I've made some progress, but not as much as I'd like to. Alright, and then we have my new releases page for 2024. Any of the ones with stars next to them, like this one, were books that I knew that I really wanted to buy, or they were by favorite authors or something. And then any of the ones that have been marked, like this one or this one, were books that I bought. So clearly I didn't buy very many of the books on the new releases page, and I went a little crazy and just kind of wrote a bunch of books that sounded vaguely interesting. So yeah, here's my 2024 new releases. And then we have my books bought in 2024. You can see here that I ran out of space in September and made a second page later, but the goal was not to run out of space. Clearly, I have a problem with buying a lot of books. Anyways, then my days read throughout the year. This is me saying that I read 213 days out of the total year. I don't really know why I wrote it like that, but whatever. So each filled in line is a day that I read, clearly. All 6 months. Yeah. Alright, and then we have my Rick Riordan series tracker, because I've been trying to get through all of his series, because I only ever read The Olympians and then The Lost Hero. And so I got through Heroes of Olympus, and I got through part of King Chronicles, but not all the way. So like this page is a page I made in 2024, but now, currently still in 2026, if I read one of these books, I will come back here and check off that I read the book, right? Because my little completionist, perfectionist heart would be sad otherwise. And then we have my series tracker. So we have a bunch of different series, and again, filling it in if I've read it. So like I just read Shadow and Bone recently. I came back and filled that in. yeah, this was just some of the series I had. Clearly, I have not read very many of them still. We're working on it. We're working on it. It's gonna be fine. I'm gonna get through them all eventually. All right, and then we have my January page. So each month of 2024, I laid out pretty much the same. We have the titles, we have January, and then we have the monthly reading challenge. And I looked up just a reading challenge that I found on Pinterest or something like that, and was using those for the challenge. And then the book that fit the challenge, and then information on that book. So pages, format, genre, when it was released, when I read it, and how many stars I gave it, and then me talking about the book. And then my overall stats for the month. So how many total books I read. Read 4, clearly. And then how many total pages I read, how many books I bought, and how many days I read, right? So yeah, that's the setup in 2024. Most of the months will look like this. There's little snowflakes or like little doodles to kind of fill the space every month that have to do with something relevant to the month to me, or just like something thematic. So January is winter, so I made it have snowflakes. Not that it snows in Texas, but whatever. So the January challenge, the monthly reading challenge for January, was read a book with the color in the title. So I read The House in the Cerulean Sea. And then we have something that I do every time I finish a series. I have a spread to talk about it, talk about how much I liked it or what I didn't like, favorite characters, sometimes it'll be favorite book. But for series that I like more, I try to make it a bigger spread than series I was just kind of indifferent to, right? So anyways, here's my Six of Crows spread. I really liked this one. This was before I started making them like super fancy, but this was me just getting to gush about Six of Crows and how much I loved the series. So yeah, I really like that I was able to do this, and I really want to reread these books again soon. Okay, February, I tried to be a little different and I tried to switch the sides, and then I decided that I hate that, so I never did this again. Anyways, January. Okay, January was read a book with the first letter of your name in the title, and since my name is Catherine, I read The Knife of Never Letting Go. I really enjoyed this book. It was so good. And then there's the one book that I finished this month. We have the total books, pages read, book spot, days read, all that information. And then we have March, same format. The monthly reading challenge is read an author you've never read before. So I read Wayward. I was really disappointed in this book, actually, and I'd wished it was better. But whatever, I'm not going to get into it. Anyways, this month was when I realized that I had been kind of matching the cover with the color that I was choosing for the book. So I decided that I was going to keep doing that. And I did that for the rest of the year. So April was read a book of poetry, right? We have all the same information. There's little flowers. This is the closest color I could get to that cover, though, so it's not perfect. Yeah, I did not do a very good job early on in 2024 of reading and finishing books within the month that I wanted to. Like, I read this book in May. It's the book for April. Whatever. Anyways, yeah, so there's April. And we have May. Monthly reading challenges read a book with a season in the title. So I read The Summer I Turned Pretty, and I didn't watch the show. I didn't watch it right away. And that's okay, because I've watched it now, and it's so cringy, and I love it. It's great. I need to make my boyfriend watch it so badly. Anyways, all the same information, right? We have May. That was... These were an attempt at a seashell. This one's probably the best one, because it's summer, and the book cover had seashells on it. I didn't know what to do, right? And then I realized I ran out of space on my series tracker page because I have so many starts to a series. So I made a new one because I didn't have The Summer I Turned Pretty on it, and I just started the series. So I was like, I should have that, right? So I made Series Tracker Part 2, right? And then this little blocked off section right here is for rereads or continuations of books that I read when I was younger. So like this book I read in 9th grade, and I wanted to go back and finish the series because I remember really enjoying the book but never finishing the series, right? So this is what that is. A bunch of other series that I have that I haven't finished or started. All right, and then we have June. So the challenge for this one was read a book talk recommendation. I don't have TikTok, so I just did a like YouTube, Instagram recommendation. Read ACOTAR, started it, didn't finish it. I read like 4 chapters, wasn't getting into it. Tried again in December and read it in 4 days. So that's why the range is so long. Yeah, these little birthday balloons because my birthday's in June. Same kind of vibe, right? Great. Okay. And then I made my TBR as of June 14th. So this is when I was updating this in June. All the different colors of the authors are for different genres. I don't remember what all the colors are, but whatever. So yeah, this is what I had. This is my TBR. At the time, I couldn't grow it because I'd done this and was like, how long is the physical TBR at the end of the year? I don't know. I never answered the question because I was really bad at buying. I bought a lot of books this year, as we saw on the Bookspot page, right? And then I decided to start doing a 3-month TBR, right? So I have my summer TBR. This is supposed to be for June, July, and August. And I would fill it in if I've read the book. I, again, did not do very good. These were all standalone books, and these were all parts of a series, which is why they're smaller. I don't like that I did that, but I've learned in 2 years what I like and don't like in my book journal, right? And then we have my Heroes of Olympus spread. Here are some of the Percy Jackson stickers from the collection that I got the sticker on the cover from. I really like the way this spread turned out. I have a Percy Jackson and the Olympians spread in my first book journal that I think looks great. So here's the second part for Heroes of Olympus. Really proud of how this one turned out, actually. I think it looks pretty good. And then we have my Skin of the Siege spread and the Summer I Turn Pretty spread. So as clearly these are both series that I didn't like as much, enough to give them like a full 2-page spread. So they each have 1 page. They were still both really good and I really enjoyed them, but they just don't have as much space because I didn't enjoy them as much as like Heroes of Olympus or Six of Crows. Yeah, so here's my thoughts on those. I have the little stars next to them, and then I have obviously clearly the book covers for the series. Oh, this was me writing this past year after I watched the show, because I was talking about wanting to watch the show. Yeah, I was like, I do want to watch the show though. So this is me saying that I did watch the show, and it was incredibly cheesy. Yeah, all right. So then we have July. After I'd made my summer TBR, I was trying to stick to it a bit. So some of these books were on it, some of them weren't. I was also trying to read a lot of the books on my 24 books in 2024 page because I had read like 2 of them maybe. So I think all 3 of these were on that list. So there we go. And then I wanted a couple quick books, so I started a manga series. We have some fireworks for July, because of the 4th of July. So the July prompt was read a book outside of your typical genre. This was a nonfiction / true crime history book. I have a lot of nonfictions, true crimes, histories, and the like, but I strongly prefer reading fantasy or mystery thriller or something, so I figured that was outside my typical genre. So there we go. And then we have August, which was read a book published at least 50 years ago. So I read The Fellowship of the Ring, finally started Lord of the Rings series. I'd watched the movies years ago, but I never actually saw the movie, or never actually read the books. You might also notice that the pages read is not here for some of these my monthly spreads because I didn't finish calculating them because I listened to these, and so I was putting how many pages the physical copy of it was. So like I own this book, So I put it was 506 pages, but I don't own this one yet, so I don't know how many pages it was or how far through it I got. So I can't actually calculate my pages read. But that's okay. We have little apples all over. And then we have the fall TBR. I liked this layout a lot more. It's just the tiny little squares. This TBR, I had, I think, 30 books on it. And then I alternated between this red color, this orange color, and this yellow to mark when I read the book. Again, I wasn't doing very good at reading the books that were on the TBR, but I wasn't doing terrible either. I was doing better than I had been, I guess. I don't know. I was doing fine. I was doing mediocre. Okay, and we have my September spread, which is borrow a book from a friend. So I borrowed my boyfriend's favorite book from him and I read it. And I really enjoyed it actually. But yeah, you can tell that I was not getting good at reading the book in the month. So yeah, there's a bunch of little dog paws because my dog's birthday is in September, or his gotcha day is in September. So that's why there's dog paws. And then we have October, which is read a book about witches. So I read One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. I loved this book. It was like witches, but they're Romeo and Juliet. Oh, so good. Anyways, yeah, so that was that book. And then the books I read for October. Little ghosts, kind of, because of October. And then November was read a band book. This month I read Monday's Not Coming, partially for reading a book in one of my classes, and also because it fit the vibe, or it fit the challenge, so it worked out. And then I read a lot more books in November because school was ending and I was trying to finish up books from school. So like I was finishing this for a paper, this for a paper, this because we'd read most of it and I just wanted to finish it, this for this assignment, not this assignment, for the assignment I had in the class to read the book. So I read that book. Yeah, this was an audiobook that my family and I had started listening to ages ago. And we finally finished it on a road trip, so I counted that I finished it. Because I think we also restarted it earlier this year. And then clearly my book spot continued because I was running out of space on the other page. And by running out, I mean I had completely run out of space. So October, November, December are here because there wasn't any more space. And then I have my Middle Earth spread for The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, talking about reading them and how I want to rewatch the movies again. I still haven't done that, but I do need to go back and watch these movies again because I want to, now that I've read the books. And then I have my winter TBR. I was clearly doing much better at sticking with the TBR this go around. This TBR was also for December, January, and February, so it bled into the following year, bled into 2025. I did a lot better, and not great still, but I did a lot better. And now, after the TBR section is done, I've read 4 more of these books, which is also really good. Yeah, 4 more of these books. So getting through my TBR slowly. Then we have December, which is read an author's debut novel, which apparently The Song of Achilles is Madeline Miller's debut novel. So yeah. And then a lot of this month was also finishing up reading challenges. So like ACOTAR, Armada, One for My Enemy, Song of Achilles. These were all reading challenges that I hadn't finished for their month. Well, Song of Achilles was in this month, but the others were ones that I hadn't finished for previous months, so started doing those. These are really bad trees, but don't worry about it. So yeah, there's December. And then we have my 2024 year in books. So I drew 50 little squares because I read 50 books. And each square is colored in with a different color that correlates to a genre. I separate my fantasies a lot. So I have fantasy, mythology, supernatural fantasy, and oh, I don't have the other one here. Paranormal fantasy. I guess I didn't read any of those. No. Oh, fantasy, mythology, supernatural / paranormal fantasy, and like steampunky fantasy. So those are very divided because I have so many fantasy books. So yeah, each color represents a different genre that I read, which is great. I have my average star rating of 3.9. My shortest book was The New World by Patrick Ness, which was 36 pages. It was also a novella at the end of The Knife of Never Letting Go, so that's obviously why it's so short. And then my longest book was The House of Hades, which is 597 pages by Rick Riordan. And I'm really proud of myself for finally finishing that series because I've been wanting to since I was like 13. I'm finally done, which is great. And then I read about 16,909 pages according to Goodreads. So yeah, that's 2024. Right now I have my 2025 section. So I finally had like an actual cover for 2025. This is just some scrapbook paper that I got at Michael's, I think, and put in here. And then my 2025 reading goals were read 50 plus books, pass. Reduce physical TBR by 20. It was 135 at the beginning of the year. And I failed that so miserably. It's bad. It's bad. Anyways, only buy the next book in the series or a new release. I also failed that because I'm bad about doing that. I just like buying books for buying books. Read the monthly book within that month because, as you saw in the 2024 section, I did not do that whatsoever. So I made sure to try to do that this year, and I passed. Go me. And then don't buy more books than fit on the Bookspot page. So no, don't make a second page like I did in 2024. And I failed that as well because I bought so many books. Complete more of the Goodreads challenges. I did really good on that. I actually completed all of the Goodreads challenges, so pass. Read more books I already own. So to determine this, I just went through my Bookspot page at the end of the year and checked which of the books on that list I read and which ones I didn't read. So if it was mostly unchecked, then I read more books that I already own because I was prioritizing books that were already on my shelves rather than books I was just buying. And then read as much as possible. Try for every day. So this pass fail was determined by greater number of days than last year, which I passed. So here is 2025. So we start again with the new releases in the days read, but this time instead of making them both two spreads or 2 pages, I did like a 1 page each. So again, same concept of crossing it off. If I bought it, I bought a lot more of the books that I wanted, that I put on this list, because I put a lot more books that I wanted to get soon on this list. Oh, I need to cross this one off, and I need to cross this one off, and I need to cross that one off. Clearly this is not actually up to date, so I do need to fix that. Anyways, here's all my days read. Clearly I read a lot more days than last year. So again, we have my little numbers of each number of days I read each month marked off. So I read a lot more than last year, and I'm very proud of that. So yeah. All right, and then I wanted to do a favorite books of each month spread for this year. So I each month picked my favorite book. It was usually whichever one I rated highest or whichever one I kept thinking about after the fact. Some of them, like April and May, had a couple books and I couldn't decide which one to put. So these ones might have had like 2 or 3 options because there were a lot of good books in April and May. But yeah, so my favorite book of January was The Ask and the Answer, which is the sequel to The Knife of Never Letting Go. And then February was A Court of Mist and Fury, which was the sequel to ACOTAR. March was Heartless Hunter. April was the new Hunger Games, Sunrise on the Reaping. May was Rebel Witch, which is the sequel to Heartless Hunter. June was Atmosphere. July was Light Lark. August was Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. September was The Naturals. October was Bad Blood, which is in the Naturals series. November was Girl Dinner, and December was Rock Paper Scissors. So yeah, I really liked doing this. I like seeing what books I liked the most each month. I think it's just a fun way to be like, oh, this was my favorite book that month or whatever. Anyways, then I did an A to Z reading challenge. I tried to read a book that started with each letter of the alphabet. And for my challenge to myself, I had to make sure that none of the books were by the same author. So none of them could be in the same series either. So each book had a different author. Each book actually started with that letter. So there wasn't a like the, a, that or whatever in front of the letter. So it wasn't like the Rebel Witch, it was just Rebel Witch, right? So I did do that, actually, very surprisingly. And I'm really proud of myself for actually doing that because I read a lot of books this year, and this started to become a challenge in the later half of the year. So we have All Creatures Great and Small, Beautiful Ugly, Carrie Soto is back, Delilah Green Doesn't Care, Everything is Tuberculosis, Fires in the Bathroom, which was a book for school, Girl Dinner, Homeseeking, Iron to Iron, Journey to the Center of the Earth. This cover does say A Journey to the Center of the Earth, but the copy I read didn't. This is not the same cover as the one I read, but the copy I read didn't have that, so I counted it for J. Killer Instinct, Lies Like Poison, Monsters of Men, Nightbane, Out of the Easy, Parable of the Sower, Quidditch Through the Ages. Q was really hard, especially because I didn't have like the or anything in front of it, so it couldn't be the Queen or whatever. It just had to be Q. So I read Quidditch Through the Ages, which I had already for some reason. Rebel Witch, Sunrise on the Reaping, Tomorrow, Uprooted, Vanishing Daughters, Wrath of the Triple Goddess. I know it says Percy Jackson, but that's just saying that it's a part of the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, but the book was called Wrath of the Triple Goddess. Xenocide, Yellowface, and Zeus Grant's Stupid Wishes. Alright, and then we have my book spot in 2025 page, right? So each square is filled in with the corresponding color for the month and like the corresponding color here of the month, and then I just wrote the title of the book and who it was by. So I can just look at this and be like, okay, I got January, February, March, April, May, June, and so on. I did the same thing I did last year in trying to match the color for the month with the cover of the book. So you might see that later on. I don't know, I liked trying to match it. And then I don't know if you can tell, there's little pencil marks next to the books on my book spot page that I've read this year, or that I read last year. It's 2026 now. That I read last year to mark and see if I read more books that I already owned or not, right? Then we have Series Checker Part 3, because as we've been over, I have so many series or starts to a series, and I needed a third space for series. So here's the third one. A lot of different series, obviously. So yeah. And then we have January. Again, same setup as last year with the monthly reading challenge, and then the book and the pages, format, genre, when it was released and when I read it, and the star rating, my thoughts, and then my stats for the month. I also included because the challenge I had, or the challenge I read, was also like each of the monthly challenges had a name, like a title. So I put that as well, and then what it meant. So January was New Year, New Direction. Read a book with one or more directional words in the title, and I figured out is a directional word. Sometimes I don't follow the prompt exactly because I just do it how I want because it's my books and I can do whatever I want and read my books how I want. Then we have February, and this is when I started to kind of change up my layout. Not really. What I mean by that is that I added this calendar right here so I can see exactly what dates I read each book, and each book has a corresponding color that lines up with the book. And yeah, I really like this. I've continued doing this. I'm really enjoying doing this, actually. I think it's really fun to see at the end of the month, especially if I've read so many books, what day I actually read them. So the February challenge was if you have a garden and a library, read a book with a plant or flower on the cover. Delilah Green has little plants in the background right there, so I chose that. And then since I finished this series, I made a chaos walking spread for that series, which is great. So I have the cover of the book and the short story that was at the end of it for each one, and then the narrators for each one, because I liked that each book added a narrator. I thought that was really interesting. And then this is a quote from my best friend because something happened in the book that I had to explain it to her and text her because we watched the Chaos Walking movie when it came out a couple years ago together. And so I had to text her and be like, okay, this just happened in my book. And that was her response. And I think that is absolutely hilarious and very fitting to the situation. But yeah, so there's my thoughts. I put my least favorite character here because I didn't really have a favorite character, but I definitely had a least favorite character in this book because this man was awful. Anyways, we have my spring TBR. Clearly, I did so much better about actually sticking to the TBR this year. Um, this book I'm really sad about though. I had to write a little note next to it because I might not ever get to read that book because the author has no current plans to re-release it, and it was included in a pre-order of the book after it because this is just a short story, which is really sad because I did want to read all parts of the series, but that's okay. I finished the rest of the series later. It's fine. So yeah, I did a lot better about actually reading books on the TBR. I was really proud of myself for that one. And then down here, kind of, I was adding some of the books from the Goodreads challenges. So, like, books that fit in with the Goodreads challenges around this time, I put down here. And then March, the challenge was animal, number, color, name. Read a book with an animal, number, color, or name in the title. So I read Mary Jane. It's about this girl named Mary Jane. Whoa. And then again, my little calendar. Like I said, I really liked using the little calendar. And then all of the books that I read and all of that. And then we have April, which was I like big books. I actually did change this one because the original prompt was read a book over 400 pages long or listen to an audiobook over 14 hours long. And I read books over 400 pages all the time. So I changed it to be over 500 pages or over 15 hours. I read A Court of Wings and Ruin, which was 699 pages. So clearly over 500 pages. Talked about it, my stats, all that. And then all the books that I read and the colors for the books. And then these 2 days, I think it was the end of the semester. I didn't have any classes anymore, so I wanted to do a 24-hour reading marathon. So that's what I did. I set a 24-hour timer and was planning to read these 2 days. I didn't end up finishing the timer because I got really sleepy, so I went to sleep and tried to finish the timer the next morning. Didn't finish it then either, so I end up finishing this timer in May. But so there's April. May, same concept. The idea, okay, the reason there's not a calendar here is because there's a calendar here. I thought that I was going to read a lot more books this month, so I wanted there to be a lot of space for all of my books to go. I didn't, but that's okay. So then the May monthly challenge was In It to Win It. Read a book that involves a game or contest of some sort. So I read the third Inheritance Games book because it's in the title. There's a game, there's a contest. They're trying to figure out mind games and stuff, right? Anyways, I didn't end up reading as many books as I thought I would in May, but the calendar's over here. So I have finishing my 24-hour timer on these 3 days because it took me 3 days to finish that timer. And then my roommate and I at the time did a 24-hour readathon as well. So we did another marathon these 2 days. Again, I don't think we actually finished our timers, but we read and hung out for like 24 hours, even though we did both fall asleep at some point. Anyways, so that was a good day. I got halfway through A Court of Silver Flames before then, and then I read the last half of the book, which is really funny to me. Anyways, so that's done, right? And then I have my Crimson Moth duology page. If I hadn't put the calendar here, this would have been 2 pages. I just didn't want to skip a page. So this is why it's like this. Anyways, I love the way that this looks, the way that it turned out. I think it looks so good. It's on my Instagram. I do post about this because I was gushing over the way that this looked for weeks. Because this is when I started using not just one color paper, and I got like fun scrapbook paper and fun stickers, so I made it more interesting. But I loved the way that this one turned out. I think it looks really good. I also love the way this one turned out though. My ACOTAR spread, I think it looks great. I decided after I finished this book, I think, I decided that I was gonna make this and write about each book as if I had just finished it. So I had to go back and write about these three. Well, I just finished this one, so I wrote about that one as my active thoughts. But these two, I had to like go back and write about them as if I had just read them, which was kind of funny because I had to be like, okay, what actually happened in that book? What happened in the next book? I couldn't remember, so I really like that. And then, and then I have the other two books in the series, and it's great. And it looks so good. I don't know if you think it looks good, but I think it looks great. I do probably, I know that she's gonna come out with another book though, so when that happens, I'm not changing this. It looks beautiful. I'll just make another one if once the series is like fully finished. Anyways, and then this month in May, I also finished the Inheritance Games series. So I finished 3 series in May, which was part of my goal, was to get through a bunch of series. So I'm glad that I did that. And then I have this, I really like the way this one turned out as well, because in Games Untold, there's a timeline of like when all of the short stories in this book take place and when they take place relative to the books and everything. So I wrote that timeline out. I like drew it out. I really like it. I think it turned out really great, and I like seeing like when each of the little stories took place. I think it's really fun. Again, my thoughts, my favorite character, my favorite book. Again, I just like how this one turned out. I know I didn't add any fancy paper or anything to it, but I think it looks really simple but sleek and nice. And I just really like how it turned out and the layout. I know I keep saying that, but okay. And then we have, wouldn't you know it, Book Spot in 2025 Part 2, Series Tracker 4. Yeah. Um, Clearly, I have a lot of series and I buy a lot of books. Clearly. Anyways, I did almost fill this page, this second page, which is kind of crazy because the goal was not to expand past 1 and I almost doubled it. A moment of silence. It's fine. Again, we have the little pencil markings for the books that I read. And yeah, and then we have series tracker number 4 for a bunch of different series because some of these books I didn't realize were part of a series, so I had to make another one. So, series tracker part 4. And then we have my summer TBR. I did not do very much reading this past summer because I was actually in Europe with my boyfriend doing a study abroad for a month. So a lot of my summer was spent doing German classes on that study abroad. And then the other 2 months of this TBR section, this TBR season, I just wasn't reading like at all. So that's on me. But yeah, so here's my summer TBR. Clearly, again, did not get through as many of them as I wanted to, but that's okay. And then we have June, and June's monthly challenge was take the plunge, read a book from any genre that is set on or near a body of water. Clearly, that's on a body of water. They're surfing. Okay, so I read this book because I had read Carrie Soto earlier this year and annotated it as I was reading it, and I wanted to reread the other Taylor Jenkins Reid books that I'd read and annotate them as well. So that's why I started this one. So yeah, and then I have a couple more books for Goodreads challenges. And yeah, and then July, again, did not get through very many books. It took me a while to get through Light Lark. But this was the month that I was in Europe. I was in Vienna, so I wasn't reading as much. And then this one's monthly challenge was I need only one word, read a book with only one word as the title. So I did that. I read Light Lark, so that is July. And then we have August. I, again, was not reading very much, but I was trying to get back into it, and I was getting back into it a little bit. It took me a really long time to get through Throne of Fire, though. But after that, I was going. I was doing great. So the challenge for August was a book and a movie. Read a book that has been made into a movie. So I read Ender's Game, which I've seen the movie for this, but I'd never actually read the book. So I wanted to actually read the book this time. Plus, the third book in this series was going to be my book for X for my alphabet challenge, so I needed to read it and the next two before the end of the year. And I have my fall TBR. I was getting better about getting back into reading some of my TBR books. And then this little section over here is because I was trying to join a book club on my college campus. And I went to two meetings, which is on me. But I also just wasn't really loving their picks. Also, I thought that there was going to be a pick each month of the semester. There was not. So that was disappointing. But there were only two books. So I read both of them, which is great. And then we have September. I got way back into reading in September. I bought a lot of books in September as well. And the monthly reading challenge for this was speculative stories. Read a book from the speculative fiction subgenre, i.e., a book with elements not true to the real world. And I had no idea what this meant, really, so I had to kind of just figure it out and read a book that I felt kind of fit the vibe. I'm not entirely sure. This ended up also being my book for you. Again, I read so many more books this month, which I'm really proud of, actually. And then, because I was going to the book club, I made a spread for Wuthering Heights because we were reading it in two sections. So we were reading like half the book and then the other half of the book, right? So I made a spread for the first half of the book before the first meeting because I wanted to. And so I talk about my thoughts, and then I have a couple quotes, and then like when the meeting was and all that. I think this one turned out pretty good. And then I have the second part, which I really liked, and I have my thoughts on various characters and stuff. So yeah, there's my two Wuthering Heights spreads. I'm actually really proud of them, even though the book was kind of just okay. And then we have October. I went through a lot of stuff in October, so I didn't read as much, clearly, because I only finished 3 books. But yeah, I was still trying to make sure that I was reading, but October was a rough month. So the reading challenge for October was Spellbinding or Spooktacular, which was read a book that involves something spooky or magical or both. So I read one of Stephen King's books because horror books and such, and it fit for one of the Goodreads challenges. Except then when I finished it, it broke and didn't actually count that I read it for the Goodreads challenge, which was really annoying. But whatever. And then I have The Naturals spread because I finished this series. So I have all the books, the novella, my favorite book in the series, my thoughts on the series as a whole. And then this series did this really cool thing where there were like these you chapters that were from the perspective of the unsub, so of the person that they're trying to track throughout the book. And I really liked them. So this is just me talking about the concept of the you chapters. I also really liked that I burned the edges of the sticker paper. Oh, I'm really proud of that one. Again, I really like how this one turned out, so I'm really proud of that spread. And then we have my Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping spread for the second book club pick. And then I drew the fox and the little rooster. I really like the skeleton rooster, actually. And I talked about my thoughts on the book. I was really salty going into this book because the vibe that the book club was wanting for October was a spooky book. And this is the book that they chose. And I was like, this is not a spooky book. Everything else on their list was spooky, and this was the least spooky. And so I was a little annoyed and put off, but I did eventually finish it, and I made this spread, and I think it looks pretty good. It's not my best, but it's fine. I also finished it 2 months after I finished the book, so it took me a while to write down everything. But then we have November, and the prompt was around or out of this world. So read a book set in a different country or in space or on another planet. So I read Blood for Blood and finished the Wolf by Wolf duology, or series. There's 2 short stories as well as the 2 main books. This is the series that I started in 8th or 9th grade that I finally finished. So that one's good. Same kind of setup as 2024 with all of the books that I read. And then I have my Wolf by Wolf spread, so I'm talking about the cover, or talking about the book. I hate this title that I drew, but I didn't feel like redoing it, so this is what we live with. But yeah, I really like how this one turned out. And then I made my winter TBR just for the month of December because I decided to try to do something new in 2026. So I did pretty good getting through most of this stuff in December, actually, and I'm currently reading this one, so getting through most of the winter TBR anyways, which is good. And then we have December, so this was me trying to get to 75 books, even though my goal was only 50. Because I had passed 50 and then I was like, what if I added 25 and just got to 25 more? So I tried to get to 75 and I did. And the monthly reading challenge for this, oh my gosh. But the challenge for December was whiteout. Read a book with a wintry setting or a book with a mostly white cover. So I read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I love Alice Feeney, and this was the only book I owned by her that I hadn't read yet. I'm glad that I finally read that. And then we have all of my Goodreads challenge bookmarks. So I printed out every single bookmark that I earned from a Goodreads challenge and put them all in here. I was able to earn every single Goodreads challenge this year, which I'm really proud of myself for. So that's great. So we have, this is the just overarching 2025 Goodreads reading challenge, which this page is pretty boring, honestly. It's just January, February, March, April, May. It's just finish a book within this month, right? So it's those through December, and then Grand Slam, which was complete a book every month, which I clearly did. Nailed It, which was setting and reaching your reading goal, which I did. And Stepped Up, which is complete more books than last year, which I did. Because last year I completed 50, and this year I completed 75. And then we have it separated by the dates. So we have the Community Favorites Challenge, which is from January 1st to April 30th, which had Buzzy Books. And I don't remember what the prompts for these things were, but I'm going to tell you what book I read for them. So it was I read The Great Alone, and then Epic Quest, I read Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Era Explorer, I read Did You Hear About Kitty Carr? Essential Reader, I also read Did You Hear About Kitty Carr because it counted for both. Sweet and Spicy, I read Delilah Green Doesn't Care, and Her Story, I read The Radiant Girls. And then for the seasonal challenge, from May 1st through June 30th, they started doing the like any 2, any 3, any 4. So I got those for the rest of the time. So that's what those are. And then Centennial Picks, I read Parable of the Sower. Heritage Reads, I read Homeseeking. Armchair Explorer, I read The Woman in Cabin 10. And Rainbow Reads, I read Atmosphere. And then the last two sections, so we have the Summer Challenge, again with the any 2, any 3, and then any 5 is what they changed it to. So I got those 3. And then we have Challenge Faves, I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Poolside Puzzlers, I read The Soulmate. Chart Toppers, I read Bury Your Bones in the Midnight Soil. Acclaimed titles, I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Debut Darlings, I read Deep Cuts. And Lightning Round, I read Bury Your Bones in the Midnight Soil. And this is from July 1st through September 14th. And then this last one, the Fall Challenge, was between September 15th and December 31st. Again, any 2, any 3, any 5. And then I read the Community Picks, I read Girl Dinner. For Hispanic Heritage, I read Vanishing Daughters. For Spine Tinglers, I first read The Institute, and then it didn't count that I read it. So I read My Heart is a Chainsaw. For Heartwarmers, A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping counted, which was great, because I didn't really want to read that book anyways, and I'm glad that it actually counted for something. For Fiction Faves, I read Yellowface. For Memorable Memoirs, I read Notes on Grief. For Native Voices, I read My Heart is a Chainsaw. For Bite-Sized Books, I read Everything is Tuberculosis, and for Choice Awards, I also read Everything is Tuberculosis, because some of these books counted for both challenges, or for 2 challenges. And then the last page of 2025, I have similar setup on these 2 pages as, or on right here and on this page as last year, where I have something to signify every book that I read. So this is 75 books. And then the genres for what each color means and how many books of each genre I read. And I have this little tracker up here that says I read 75 books. My sister's best friend wanted me to draw a worm, so I drew a worm because I'm a bookworm. And then overall stats, so I read 27,175 pages, and then my boyfriend helped me do the math. That averaged to roughly 8,152,500 words, which, based off of how many pages I can read in a minute, was an estimate of 776.4 hours straight reading, which is about 32.35 days straight reading, which is 8.9% of my year. But I read overall 294 days of the year, which is much better than last year. And then I gave an average of a 4.0 in my star ratings. My shortest book was The Wide Wide Sea, which is 39 pages, so another one of the short stories in the Never Letting Go series. My longest book was A Court of Silver Flames, which was 757 pages. My least shelved book was Uprooted, which was shelved by only 113 people, which is not very many. My most shelved and my highest rated, this was the same book, was A Court of Mist and Fury. So it's been shelved by 4,969,688 other people, which makes sense. And the average rating for this book is 4.64. So yeah, that is my book journal so far. Well, not so far. I do also have some set up for 2026, but that's a spoiler. You don't get to see that yet. Next year, maybe. So yeah, that is 2024 and 2025 in my book journal. I really enjoy doing this. It just kind of becomes something that I do to have fun. It's mostly, I think my favorite part is mostly the drawing little pictures and working on the series pages because I like doing the scrapbooking aspect of it. Maybe I should just start scrapbooking. Yeah, I really enjoy doing this. It's one of my favorite things about reading, actually, is that I get to mess around with my book journal and document all the books that I've read and my goals and go through my TBR and see which books I read in what month and how long it took me and all of that. So I really like doing this and I will continue doing this forever. My plan is for this book journal specifically, to have 4 years in it, I think. So 24, 25, 26, and 27. And then after that, I'm going to need to get a new one because it's already half full and I only have 2 years in it, and then the beginning of this year, obviously. But yeah, I'm really enjoying doing this.